Can you shoot cinematic videos with your phone? Honestly, the short answer is yes. But if you want to know the long answer, if you want to know all the tips and tricks, well, just stick around because that's what we're covering in today's video. My name is Chris and I'm here with InVideo, and in today's video, we're talking all about cinematic phone tips and tricks. So the first tip that you're going to want to use is stop using the selfie camera. If you're vlogging, you're talking into camera, the front-facing camera is actually a worse camera than the back camera, the rear camera. So if you're serious about shooting great quality videos, regardless of whether you're shooting cinematic travel videos, dance videos, music videos, or vlogs into camera, well, you're going to want to start using this rear camera. And seeming as we're talking about the cameras, it's also really important as well that you should use the normal lens, the main camera lens. So the ultra wide and the portrait mode, they're both really cool options. But the problem is these aren't quite as sharp as normal video mode on your phone. Yes, ultra wide is going to allow you to see more, and yes, that telephoto lens is going to allow you to get closer. But the problem is the image quality just isn't at the same level as the standard lens on your phone. So if you're really serious about shooting high quality video, then make sure you're using the standard lens on the rear of your camera. Not the front-facing camera, not the wide-angle lens, and not the telephoto, just the standard camera. And then, of course, if I was doing a how to create cinematic video in general, then I would tell you on your digital SLR camera to jump into the manual settings to control your shutter speed, your aperture, your white balance, your ISO. And I'm actually going to take all of that advice and apply it to this video as well. Because there are so many apps available to us now, we can actually take full advantage of the camera sensor and the image processor in our phones, and we can actually use manual mode rather than settling for the automatic mode built in. Now there's loads of different apps available to you. Just search for Pro Camera, Professional Camera, manual settings on your camera into your app store of choice, and just download one of those apps, because these are going to allow you to control your frame rate, your shutter speed, your aperture, and all of these different settings to allow you to shoot really cinematic videos. You see, the problem is when you're using your standard video mode in your camera, the problem is it's always adjusting the settings. So if you go from a light part to a dark part of the frame, then the camera will automatically adjust. And the thing is, if you're trying to achieve cinematic effects, then sometimes you don't want it to automatically adjust. If there's a bright light in the frame and then the rest of the frame is dark, then you won't get that same level of effect because your phone will try and boost everything up to be a nice bright level. But if you're going for a moodier look in your video, then unfortunately there's no way of controlling that with the automatic mode. So that's where you can go into an app and change the manual settings, and you can set your shutter speed to 1/50. You can set your frame rate to 25 frames per second. You can set your ISO to a number that gives you the exposure that you're looking for. And then of course you can play with your aperture, and you can have a low aperture to get a nice blurry background. Typically, if you're shooting cinematic video, the look that we're looking for is this nice bokeh in the background, so that blurry background. So if you download a professional video app onto your phone and then you set the aperture down to a smaller number like f2.8, f4, then you're going to get a really nice blurry background if you're close to the camera. The problem is when you're just in your automatic mode, you can't control any of that. You just kind of get what you shoot, and it's great that you can just very quickly and easily just set this up and you can start rolling, but you're just not going to get that professional look from the automatic standard camera mode than you would do versus the manual mode. So download a professional manual mode camera app for your phone, take control of all of those settings, and treat your phone more like a digital SLR camera rather than just a point and shoot camera. For tip number 3, we're talking about stabilization. Because nobody likes shaky handheld footage. You can kind of get away with it when you have a larger camera, but the problem is when you're trying to handhold a phone, you're going to see every single shake and vibration from your hand. So if you're just holding your phone up like this, then unfortunately all of that shake in your hand is going to be converted into your footage, and you're just going to end up with shaky, bumpy footage that doesn't look professional. So there's a few different ways that we can fight this. The first option is to get a tripod and mount this so that it is static. So you could get a phone tripod, get some sort of clamp to mount that, and then when you're talking into the camera, you've just got a really nice static shot and it's not distracting. Alternatively though, if you wanted to move, then you could actually get a gimbal for your phone So the DJI Osmo is a great example of this, where you just clip your phone into this gimbal and then you can run around and get really nice seamless gimbal shots, and that's going to give your videos a really nice professional look. Now next up is lighting, and it doesn't matter if you're shooting on a £50,000 Red camera or an iPhone, lighting is the make or break. If you have bad lighting, regardless of what camera you're using, you'll have bad looking video. And of course, if you have great lighting, then again, you'll have great video regardless of what you're shooting on. So if you're shooting inside, then I would seriously recommend getting some lights and using these in the room that you're filming in. In this room, for example, I've got a large softbox right in front of me, and then I've got these 4 strip lights behind me, which are adding a nice backlight onto myself. Now, of course, this is a slightly different setup. I would generally recommend the 3-point lighting setup. So in a 3-point lighting setup, you have 3 lights. You have 2 in front of the subject and 1 behind. So your main light is your key light, and this is going to throw the most amount of light onto your subject. Then you've got a fill light, which is on the opposite side, and that's just going to fill in any shadows that the key light might put onto your face. And then of course you've got a backlight, which is just going to catch the back of your hair and just make you pop from the background. Of course though, this is just a really standard and really basic lighting setup. You can get really creative with lighting. Just make sure you're giving your camera sensor enough light so that you don't have noisy, grainy footage. And then of course, if you're outside, then there is no bigger light source than the sun. So try and avoid filming at nighttime, and if you do happen to film at night, then try and use some lighting. But if you can, try and film during the day. Now, filming during the day does come with some challenges, because if you have the sun glaring into your subject's face, it's going to be distracting because they're going to be squinting, there's going to be harsh shadows. So try to put the sun behind them. And then if you can, try and grab some diffusion or a reflector so that you can bounce light or soften the light on the subject. You can get 5-in-1 reflector and bounce and diffusion kit from Amazon for around $30. Next up, we're talking about audio. It doesn't matter if you have the best looking video, you could have Hollywood or Bollywood level video, and unfortunately if your audio quality isn't there, then it's just going to look amateur. So make sure you put the time and the effort into capturing great quality audio, because that will make your video look more professional. And generally, if you're shooting a piece to camera, you're inside, then there's a few different options that you can use. You could use a vocal mic like this, which you can get really close to, and you can get really nice sound. This is quite an expensive setup though, so I wouldn't recommend it for a beginner. If you're a beginner, I would recommend maybe a Rode VideoMic Pro or a Rode NTG2. And then you just basically want to try and get that as close to the person talking as possible. You could even use the voice recording app on your phone, for example. As long as it's close to the person talking, then you're going to capture great quality audio. So you could have the best microphone in the world, but if it was placed 20 meters away from the subject talking, the audio will be terrible. But if you took that same microphone and took it very close to the person talking, then it will sound great. I'll give you a quick example. So this microphone sounds really good up close, but unfortunately the audio just doesn't sound the same. It's not the same quality. So get yourself a separate microphone. You could go for a higher end option like a Rode NTG2. You could go for a Rode VideoMic Pro, or alternatively, you can just get a shotgun microphone that goes onto your phone. Just make sure that you're filming very close to the person that is talking on camera. So if you do have a shotgun microphone on the phone, mounted into the phone, then make sure you're not getting wide shots. Make sure you're always talking close to the camera. That's how you're going to get the best possible audio. And then of course, if you're moving around or if you're outside and you just need a little bit more freedom, then a wireless lavalier microphone is always the best route to go. So a wireless lavalier microphone is a wearable microphone that you can either clip onto your shirt or mount underneath your shirt. And these are really great because they're giving your talent the flexibility to move around. They don't have to be close to the microphone because they're wearing the microphone. Now, of course, like all equipment, you can spend loads getting an amazing lavalier microphone, but you could actually get away with maybe £50 towards a basic plug-in option. Now, when you're filming your videos, it's always really important as well that you have a variation of shots. There's no point just having the same shot over and over and over again because you're not adding anything new. So if you're filming some action, then you want to try and get at least 3 variations of the shot. So this is the same for if you're shooting a music video or an action scene or a dance video. It doesn't matter what it is, you need variations. So typically I like to get an establishing or a wide shot, which is a shot where I'm all the way back and I can see everything within the frame. So I can see the location, I can see the people in the scene, and I can see everything happening around them. Then I would also like to get the same take on a medium shot. So this is knees to waist up to around the head. So we're a lot closer now and we're starting to see more of the action. And then I would also love to get a close-up, and a close-up is somewhere around here, chest up. And close-ups are really awesome as well because you're allowing your viewer to connect with the person on screen. Because the audience is going to see everything, they can really connect, they can look into the person's eyes and they can make a connection with the person on screen. Of course, the beauty as well with having all of these options is we've got a variety of shots and therefore we have variations. So we're giving the audience something new all the time. It's not just a mid shot after a mid shot after a mid shot. We're playing with different focal lengths. We've got a wide shot, a mid shot, a close up, and you can also experiment with a few other shots as well. It's also really important as well to look at your project, look at what you're specifically making and figure out what is going to help to tell the story. Maybe you need a really creative point of view shot where the camera looks like it's mounted to the person's head. Or maybe you need an over-the-shoulder shot where you're looking through somebody's shoulder at somebody. Maybe you need something a little bit more creative. Maybe you need a one shot where the camera never cuts and the camera is just always moving around the scene. Look at your story, look at your shot and figure out what type of camera movements and what type of camera framing is going to help to tell your story. And then of course, if you want to get really flashy, then we can talk about some creative in-camera video transitions. Now, there's loads of different transitions available to you, but I'm going to give you my top 3 video transitions. Now, the first transition is a whip pan. And essentially a whip pan is just a whipping movement in one direction. So at the end of your first shot, you just want to pick a direction, so right or left, up or down, and then you're filming, and then whip, and then we cut. And then we go to a different location, a different scene, we start framed away, and then we do the action into the scene. Now it's really important that if you whip to the right at the end of the first shot, you're continuing that movement into the second shot. So essentially all you have to do to cut these together is just cut the end of the first clip, cut the start of the second clip, and then just bring these together in video. And then my second transition is a rotation transition. And this works exactly like a whip pan, but rather than whipping, we're going to rotate. So at the end of the first shot, we'll just rotate upside down. And then at the start of the second shot, we'll start upside down and then whip back up into the frame and go into the action. Again, that's a similar process for editing. You just take the end of that first shot off, take the start of the second shot off, find the point where there's the most motion blur in the frame, and then put these two together in video, and you've got a great transition. And then transition number 3 is a slide past the foreground. So this one sounds a little bit more complicated, but it's actually really simple. So at the end of your first shot, you just want to slide past something in the foreground. So if there's something happening in front of you, you want to find an object close to your camera, and then you just want to slide past it and completely cover the lens at the end of that first shot. Now, at the start of the second shot, you want to start behind a different object, and then you'll pull out, carrying that same direction across into your second shot. And then again in video, you just have to trim the end of the first shot, the start of the second shot, put these two together, and you've got a really cool transition. Now, this slide is really important that you get very close to the object in the foreground, and it's also worth doing this at quite a decent pace. If you're too slow, this transition won't work. Make sure you've got a decent pace when you're transitioning out of your first shot and into your second shot. And there you go. Those are my top tips for how you can create cinematic videos on your phone. If you follow all of these tips, I promise you your videos are going to look 10 times better. So were these tips helpful? And if so, which tip or which tips were your favorite? Let us know in the comment section below. And of course, please do check out the next video where I talk all about how you can create a cinematic video by choosing the perfect music track and by cutting to the beat. So thank you for watching. This is Chris with InVideo, and
Đăng ký dùng thử miễn phí phần mềm tạo video tại trang web invideo.design.